Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Sheepdog Mindset. I'm Nick.
I'm David.
So we're coming back from Christmas break. We went over the last few episodes. We talked about um, different structures of church security
Right.
from the outside, working our way in, and then finally the last one, which we made sure we were trying to get it out before Sunday services for Christmas service because it's important. We talked about the sanctuary and a little bit about pastoral protection, why some of those are a little bit more important than others,
Right.
and if you're minimal staffing, what's more important to to make sure you have in place, kind of thing. So, um, did anything happen? Did
I
you have a good Christmas? Did
we
anything happen?
did. It's the most nerve-wracking day of the year for me, and my phone didn't ring, so that's a great
Yeah,
thing.
absolutely.
We have event-free Christmas and security. That's a good thing. So, I was very happy with that outcome. Had a lot of good stories. A lot of lives got touched. People were telling me about things that happened at their specific churches that were pretty cool to be in this industry and see how much we're changing people's lives. So,
Yeah, yeah, and to make it, make that environment, more safe for them to
right,
be able to do that. That's our goal. That's what's important to us.
right,
So I think today we're trying to push on just a little bit. We'll kind of pump the brakes on some of the church security structure part of it.
right.
I think it's important that we kind of touch on, what kind of training we
Yeah.
do.
All that left of bank stuff. I mean,
Yeah,
how do you, what we are as a training group, and we train people to do security work. It's not just putting on a badge and going out there, and you have to train. If you're not training, you're not trying. So we're going to talk a little bit today about some of the equipment that we particularly use. We're going to touch on stress inoculation training, which is pivotal. It's absolutely key that you add stressful training into your training. I played soccer as a kid. We didn't just sit there and talk about it. We were out there ran scrimmages, and we had to condition. We had to actually do these things. Got our heart rates up, and let us, we scrimmage with all that stuff. Same thing here. You want to walk through the motions of it, and in a stressful environment like a shooting or a violent encounter, something in your church, you're going to be stressed. I don't care how prepared you are. You're going to be stressed. So if you're not training with stress, how do you know how you're going to act during stress? Because I think we already touched on some of the things that your body's going to do. Your fine motor skills diminish and your gross motor skills increase. So we need to simulate that as best we can. So we're not gonna talk so much about the training today. We're gonna talk a little bit about some of the equipment that we use, and some of it is hard to get a hold of, being honest. Some of it you can get, some of it you might have to go through police departments and things like that to get. But
yeah, it's absolutely important to us. I mean, the stress inoculation, the reality based training, you know, mentality of putting yourself in more situations that are a little bit more safe than actually having to learn on the fly
right,
when the bullets start flying or whatever the case may be. We want to be able to ensure that our the people we train are better prepared because they have more knowledge based on a reality based type of
right,
scenario or training, which is important because we've said it before. I think we have in other episodes. You don't know what you don't know,
right.
and you don't know how you're going to react
You
until
you
that
don't.
time comes. So it's important that we try to use the best equipment we can get a hold of in order to simulate as much as possible the reality of a gunfight, of
Right.
somebody trying to stab people with a knife, and what the reactions are. Having that real consequence. We're not trying to hurt anybody, but there's pain is a wonderful
It
training
works.
tool.
It works, and
Pain is a wonderful training
you
tool.
don't forget that lesson. I know in the scenarios that we've done, the trainings that we've done, I've had a lot of our officers and people we train that have talked about, oh, I couldn't hear, I couldn't see. I'm like, well, of course you couldn't because you were stressed. That means the training works. And you can blame it on the equipment all you want, but it's not the equipment because in talking to them with their hood on, if I whisper to them, they can hear me. But if I scream at them, they can't hear me. So what does that mean? It means they're getting stressed. So we're going to show you a couple of training aids that we use in some of our scenarios. And a lot of it's going to be based on worst case scenarios like Nick just talked about, a gun, a knife, an explosive, something along those lines. It's not necessarily just the domestic that's happening in the parking lot where the most dangerous thing is a set of car keys or something. We're going to talk more along the lines of somebody with an intentional, coming in to intentionally harm you, which is our worst case scenario.
No, we do train those things.
Yeah,
We do
and you
train
should.
de-escalation, how to talk to people. That's important. Using those verbal judo skills, as I like to put it, of being able to talk somebody into making that environment safe or to calm them down or whatever the case may be. But we also have to train for the extreme.
Right.
We have to train for the extreme. And some of the tools that we use are what we call the FX Simunitions guns.
Yeah.
FX Simunitions made by General Dynamics. They actually make this is the Glock 17T. model that's a training version. It only shoots a specific kind of training ammunition, so
Yeah. So
it's
this isn't
completely safe.
that's an FX training cartridge. What it is it's a soap or a dye, soap with dye in it, using just a primer, which is plenty to send this little plastic capsule out. The gun, and I don't mind pointing at the camera, but that's a ported barrel. That's a safety feature of it. It's not supposed to chamber an actual live round. It can be done, but it's not easy. This is chambered in 9 millimeter.
I would almost say we've actually tried to see if we can
Right.
get a live round in there, and unless you
hammer it.
hammer that thing, and at that time you may end up making it going off. There's no way you're getting a live round in there, which
Right.
ups the safety aspect of me, because on what we call force on force, we're going to be pointing these things at each other.
Right.
We're going to be shooting at each other to simulate what the stress response would be in a gunfight.
Right. And the good thing about this is actually a Glock platform. I mean, it's the exact dimensions. The trigger pull is the same weight. It does a lot of the same functions that a real firearm would do. It's actually classified as a firearm. For instance, like malfunction drills, things like that, you can run those exactly like you would with a real firearm. The only downfall I would say to this would be the light. It is a very light round, so if you press check or something like that, it can take it out of battery. It can malfunction the gun. The other is you're shooting plastic through metal. It does get a little dirty inside, and I'm not going to break this one down because I'm not a clean them. I'm not sure, but it breaks down just like a real gun. So after every time you use it, you need to clean it up.
Yeah, and I will say we've had things, we've used these a lot, and even in law enforcement, that's a huge deal for us to use as training tools. But I know in using these, especially if you are doing any kind of back-to-back active shooter training, where maybe you have a limited amount of guns, but a lot of people that you're trying to get through training, they don't have time to cool down. So
Right.
what happens is these guns still get hot because there's still powder, still a charge, and that's why safety is paramount, even with just using the mask and eye pro and all that. If you're observing up on a catwalk or something along those lines, you still have to maintain the safety. But they actually do the heat up. These things are being pushed through the barrel, so you're creating a little bit of friction and heat. Well, plastic, and then the lands and grooves because they're still rifling in the barrels. Yeah. And what happens is over so many rounds of rapid succession, or if you're not giving the gun a break, sometimes that buildup will happen. But I call it too. We've done it before where they've done that. Hey, it's training. It's free training right there. If your round jams up and it doesn't feed right, or if it doesn't, you have a problem to solve.
Yeah, our church that we talked about in our last episode. I won't name him but he probably stacked about 30 of these rounds into one of these barrels. Had to actually use a drill press to get them out because they were just stacked in one after another. So there are problems that come up with it, probably more so than a real firearm. But again, like Nick just said, that's free training. Yeah. You got to work through that problem. But if it takes a little bit longer, even better. At least it's training. You're not really going to get shot.
Yeah,
right down to the magazine. Everything with this is exactly like the real firearm.
Yeah, so those magazines are actually just regular.
It is a real.
Right?
It is a real.
The only thing they do is they put a blue base plate on it to make it so that it's simulated, so that you can identify it from a distance, and that's a lot of the reasons why they're colored that way, also. But for sure, some of this stuff being as real training, anything that is unscripted is the most natural form of training you could get. And that's why I really do love using these things, even if they're dirty, even if, and we give them minimal rounds to work the problem. So they have to force them to do a reload, to do all this stuff. I mean, all of that is key, because the more you do it, and this is why we love reality-based training, what we do, the more you do it, the more comfortable you are, the more second nature that those involuntary responses are going to be, just to get back into the fight.
Right. You're driving muscle memory. The worst, the negative to that is, because it's so realistic, it's very easy to do something with a real gun. I can tell you that for simunitions, we're both instructors for simunitions, and they routinely say, 2 or 3 people every year die from this training, not from this gun, but from the real gun that they brought into the training deck. They also make a conversion kit where you don't have to buy the full gun. You can buy just certain parts of it to put in a real gun. I'm not a fan of that because of that. Yeah, because you're using a real gun. I want to be dedicated.
You use the bottom frame, right, and then you put there's a slide that you can put onto their actual gun. And there's so many mistakes that some of that stuff can happen.
Yeah.
Somebody did how many checks are you doing? I mean, we're big. We've been doing this a long time, so we're really big on safety as far as that. Double, triple checks, making sure there's no live ammo anywhere in the building that we're using, except for our armed security that we would have outside. Watching our backs basically while we do the training, because I know for some of us that carry guns, when we don't have our gun on and we're out training and stuff like that, there's like,
You're naked.
what if?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
So,
You're
but
naked.
we think of that too. One thing I want to point out about these guns, if you look, so some of these the different colorations of the slide, these are actually inserts. They changed on the newer models, because what I've seen done too is some on the newer slides, because we'll talk about red dots, my
Yep.
favorite. So we talk about red dots, putting red dots on guns. We've actually found a way to where we can modify these guns by just punching out that little dovetail sight and putting in just a dovetail plate that you can mount an optic to. So now you can use these with red dot optics, because
Right.
that's I'm a huge fan of those. I've been doing it for a minute, and I'm trying to push more of it, because I think there is such a value in being able to use this by expanding what you can use it for.
Right.
And I think a red dot does that.
One of our guys, he said something. He ended up getting a red dot because of something you said having to do with sims. And I was there when you said it. And
Oh,
it was
yeah.
that in
Yeah.
simunitions and in real shootings, you don't see your sights. But you said that when you were being a bad guy and doing this, that you were actually able to see that dot on a simunitions gun. And to me, that is both legal. I mean, there's a million reasons why that's a good thing.
Yeah.
To be able to actually see that sight under that amount of stress to see that red
I
dot.
totally forgot about that, but yeah, he's 100% right. What happened is that we've used these thousands of times, probably from the time we started our careers in law enforcement to doing this stuff and in the private sector, and we've used these over and over and over. And I maybe can count on one hand maybe the times that I've actually seen my sights, and the only reason was because I had time and there was
a
distance.
long way off. Yep.
Yeah, so I had to, right? When we started putting red dots on these training guns, every time I have used one that had a red dot on it, every single time I saw my dot on my threat and the entire picture. Because if anybody knows, I cannot shoot iron sights with two eyes open. I can't. I know there's some people out there can do it, but I got to close one eye to be able to line that up. And what do I do when I do that? Is I take away a lot of vision. I'm
your focus
shrinking
point has
all
to be
that,
on
yeah,
your
and
guns.
now it's in front of my face versus what it should be on, which is our threat, or is it because is that threat no longer a threat?
Right.
Those are huge questions, and really, reality-based training and what we do with these training tools, that's what helps us, figure that out.
Right.
And we need to figure, and that's why we love it, because we want you guys to figure it out here in a controlled environment, rather than when your life depends on it,
right?
And you're just trying to figure it out.
And before you go jump on Amazon, they're not on Amazon, or they shouldn't be. You do have to have a special license to purchase these. So what can you do? You can find somebody who does have this stuff, or it's not near as good, but even little airsoft guns, things like that, they actually shoot a little harder, in my opinion. We see more damage to walls with those than we have with these.
Yeah, 100%.
And they're not rifled, so they're not as accurate typically. But anything's better than nothing.
Yeah.
So that's on the pistols. What about edged weapons? So
yeah, edged weapons. That's a huge deal also, because like we're in Texas, and everybody in Texas carries a knife and a gun, usually. But what do people carry majority of more than anything? Knives, right? Edged weapons, and that's a huge consideration, because now you have something that is more concealable,
right?
And something that can cause a lot of damage very quickly.
We see it on everybody, though. I mean, we tell people even the homeless are going to have some kind of blade on them. It's a lot of people have knives. And what's the difference with a knife? Well, it is a close impact. You typically don't see somebody throwing a knife. So we have these standoff rules, 21 foot, 30 foot, 35 foot, depending on what philosophy you tie into. But when you're training and you see somebody with a plastic butter knife, you don't treat it real. It doesn't become reality to you. So what we have, and this is something you can actually order. They're not cheap. This is a $500 knife. But what it does is it simulates the feeling of being actually stabbed or cut through electricity. You can change the intensity of it. It does not feel like electric shock when you do it. It actually feels like a paper cut. And doing that in a scenario immediately jumps their heart rate up, which is what we're trying to do. And it also makes them treat it as a real knife without actually having to use a real knife.
Yeah, so, the funny thing about that, you really only have to use it once.
Yeah, on one person.
You really only have to use it once. And then anytime anybody sees this, the panic sets in.
Yeah, we can set this out on the floor and people start freaking out once they've seen it once. So that's for edged weapons. That's a good little aid.
It's a good start, especially when we talk about like pain is a is a wonderful teaching
Mm-hmm.
tool, because in the other aspect of it is we use that, but then we can also go into other scenarios where it's just identifying, bulges, or do
Right.
they have, because we have all kinds of training tools that we can use that are, training knives and stuff like that that look like just regular pocket knives and all that stuff. But what it is we're training the awareness.
Right.
We're training on that you identify it, that you know that it's there, and if you need to voice it's there, that you see it to whoever you're talking with, so that
Yep.
they know you see it. I mean, there's just a huge variety of different training that you can accomplish just with these few tools.
Right.
Because I know I've said it, and I'm sure when you were on the streets, the same thing. No call is ever the same.
No.
No call is ever the same.
No
You can be
operation
the
is no.
same house with the same two people with the same, time of day, but that call will be completely different
Mm-hmm.
than the next or the
Yeah.
one before it.
The one you think's crazy turns into nothing, and the loud music call turns into a shooting. You just never know what's going to happen. And even in the operations that we did plan for, they never ran as scripted. They were always different. Everything is always it's fluid. So we got to plan for fluid too. Some of the other training aids that we utilize that we didn't bring here, we have like a red man suit. It's for physical contact. You can hit. We do baton attracts with that, things like that. And it's just a big padded red suit. I'm sure you've seen those. They're also not cheap. None of this stuff is really cheap. Something else, and this is affordable but also extremely dangerous that we like to utilize is blanks. Now, these have blanks too. They're not as dangerous because this is not supposed to chamber a real round. But a lot of the blanks you're going to see are going to be 38, 223, or shotgun, things like that. You're using a real firearm. So we didn't really talk about the safety checks. I can tell you what we do. Anytime we're doing any kind of reality training, everybody has to self-check first, and then a student will check them, and then at least one instructor will check them. Same thing with these guns. When we're utilizing blanks like 38 blanks, I'll always have at least two instructors, one of them holding the ammo, one of them holding the gun. They'll both verify that they're blanks, that there's no live ammo on that person, and then they will physically load it for them. Making sure that the barrel is unobstructed. Because you obstruct a barrel with a blank in it, you now have a projectile, and that can become dangerous. So
That's how a lot of accidents in Hollywood have happened.
Jet Li died that way. So
Um,
so there's a lot of safety checks there. The reality training is crucial to me, but it's also the most dangerous training you do. So safety has to be paramount with it. You don't when there's an accident. Not only is there the accident, but there's also
Everything stops.
the scar that comes
Everything
with that.
stops.
The scar that comes with the accident it can stop somebody from being a warrior.
And that's something that we care too much about, and we're too passionate about this stuff to even think about stopping, let alone that something bad happened to the people that we're trying to help.
Right.
So that's why it's a huge deal to us. And you hear about, there's always, the Monday morning quarterback with other incidents that happen around, our country, if anything, the world. But that's one thing that we really pride ourselves on, is trying to make sure that we're safe, because we check each other nonstop. Like, I get going and I'm teaching. I've got what I'm going to be teaching, the curriculum, all this stuff on, and David reminds me, "Hey man, have we done checks to make sure everybody's good yet?" I'm like, thank you, man. Yeah,
Yep.
let's all line up over here. Yeah,
we did, but we didn't do the third check.
Yeah, we got to make
that
sure
guy
we're
went
doing.
to the bathroom, so do we check and come back in?
So
So we had to go to their car to put a knife away.
Yeah.
When they come back, we got to recheck them as if they were brand new. So
And we heard it too. What, a pocket knife? It's pocket knives. Yeah, but you have no idea what you're going to do.
Yep.
And if you are one of those guys who's constantly playing, flicking out your pocket knife because it's like an anxiety thing or something, you'd be surprised how fast people can flip out pocket knives if that's like their thing that they
Right.
do. And so if something goes erratic and goes haywire and you get so stressed out and you're one of those people, if we don't make sure that everything is completely safe and scrubbed down, and you whip out a pocket knife during a scenario in training,
right.
that's how accidents happen.
And if we do it right, if you're doing the reality training right, it becomes reality. So if in the training, we push you to the point of fear where you're in fear for your life, you might actually in training be in fear for your life, and you might reach for that live weapon and forget that it's training. I can tell you it's happened to me personally where I've, in my mind, a role player turned into a real person trying to kill me. And the gun that was in my hand literally turned into a real gun in my hand. And the officer that I was fighting with, he actually shielded his head away because he didn't want to get the muzzle flash to burn him. He thought it was real, and it was a plastic gun. So getting that stuff off the training deck is crucial, because if the training works and it becomes real to you, we don't want to have a real life incident.
Yeah.
You need to understand that real life incidents can happen at training as well, and have words or whatever. Hey, training's over. We're going to real world now. Be ready for
Well,
that kind of
we
stuff.
always have contingencies. We
Right.
always, if somebody slips and falls, or
Right.
somebody has a heart attack, or God forbid, something like that. We make sure we do. The safety briefs are always given. We always make sure everybody's understands what they are, who's in charge if something happens, who's going to call.
Who's
I mean,
on
these
medical.
are all part of doing reality-based training. We're gonna get a little bit more in depth in that in the next episode. This was more about some of the equipment and stuff,
Right.
but I mean, we are huge on utilizing technology and equipment that's out there and available for us to become better and to better teach or train others. And especially, and this is just me, we aren't training your professionals.
Right.
We are training mom and dad, uncle, grandpa, grandma.
Right.
We're training, guys that have or girls that have a full-time job in the civilian world, and we are now training them to become sheepdogs,
Right.
to become protectors. So even more, we have to abide by these safety rules and why it's so important. So anybody that's out there that has a program for a church or helps a church, I know a lot of law enforcement guys that help their church,
Right.
But in what aspect are we doing that?
Right.
Are you teaching them what they probably shouldn't be teaching them based
Yeah.
on, their knowledge or their understanding?
It's
because
been my
they live in a different world.
Yeah, it's been my experience in just talking to some of these churches who have either a Fed or a cop or something that leads their team, that most of their training involves tabletops, which there's nothing wrong with a tabletop.
No, it's
But
good.
again, how far are you willing to take the training? If all you're ever going to do is talk about it, how do you know what you can and can't do? For me, doing a training and succeeding is empowering. It clicks in my brain, yes, I can do this. Throughout my law enforcement career, there's several things that happened within that time. And I remember a whole lot of aha moments like, wow, I did do that. Ooh, I was able to do that too. Oh my gosh, I had my first physical fight and I won. That's awesome. And it built confidence to make me a better officer, a better fighter, a better warrior. This type of training does the same thing for you. It builds confidence and it teaches you sometimes a better way to do it. It's not the only way, but it's an effective thing. And I can tell you that this thing right here has saved my life multiple times. I have been, when we're doing a simunitions training, I get digestive problems the night before, and I'm kind of like, "Whoo! I'm going to work today knowing I'm going to get shot at." That's a weird feeling. And then when it happens in real life, the fear overcomes you, but you don't feel the fear because you do fall back to something that you've seen before, something that seems familiar to you. Now, when it's over, that adrenaline dump will almost knock you out.
Yeah.
But when it matters, when the bullets are flying, when the smoke is in the air, you're able to perform instead of just going fetal. And to me, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, that's the important part, to learn something from it, and I've said it before. I'll say it as long as I can say it. Failure is failure, but a mistake only becomes failure if you don't learn from it.
Correct.
Right. So we have to learn from our mistakes, and it's okay to make mistakes in training. That's what the training is for, is to be able to push yourself to the limit and understand where that limit is. If you make a mistake, then you learn from it so that you don't do it for real.
Right.
And that's why, using the tools that we have and are for a reason. The simunitions, the shock knives, the red man suits, the foam batons, certifying with pepper spray, with the reality-based training scenarios in role playing bad guys or talking to people, understanding how to talk to people, how to listen to people, what am I looking for, what am I listening for. All of those things are based in the reality-based training world. Again, I'm going into it already, but we're going to try to get
talk
into
about that
in
the next episode.
Other than that, I mean, just some equipment stuff. I mean, again, this isn't everything. Like, there's so much more stuff out there, and I think who's the other maker? It's Smith and Wesson or
UTM.
No, I'm talking about the guns. There's different variations of sim guns also. It's not just a Glock.
Oh, yeah.
I've had that question come up before.
Yes.
Where they're like, hey, is that the only thing because I carry a Beretta, or I carry a SIG, or, so there's other variations of simunition guns.
Right.
That
just
are
with
out there.
these, you can buy these in 938 and 223.
Yeah.
And they have all their safety rules and there's all that stuff. But if you're going to use this type of equipment, make sure that you know what you're doing with it. Because it can be dangerous. I've seen it split people open before. I've been split open before with one of these.
And then the safety equipment, obviously. So the PPE is another part. We didn't have it here with us, but it's something that's super important. Anytime you use simunitions, right, force on force training, you have to wear the personal protection equipment, full mask, head, helmet, neck protector, all that stuff. Any of your soft tissue vital
Right.
areas, groin protection, all that is because we have to be able to protect ourselves and still train because these do, especially if it's up close proximity. And when
Mm-hmm.
we talk about in training, most gunfights happen within, 5 to 7 yards,
Yep.
most 10. So everything happens pretty up close. And yeah, there's not a lot of stuff behind it, but if
It
you're
hurts.
close,
It
I've
hurts.
I've been close enough to get burns, like
I've
powder
had,
burns from the guns, along with the
yeah,
welts and
my bad guys just sent me pictures of their backs that just look like a dot to dot puzzle, just whelps and stuff from they got lit up. It does sting, and if it didn't, what's the purpose? I mean, it's supposed to sting. It's supposed to give you a little bit of anxiety so you can work through that. So,
yeah.
um,
Other than that, I think we'll leave it at that, man.
yeah,
I really want to get into the reality based training stuff because it's a huge deal. That's where a lot of our passion is when it comes to this stuff. So
hmm
I think we'll leave it out here for this episode. Again, we just wanted to kind of touch on some of the equipment, some of the stuff that we use, why we use it, what's important. I think next episode we'll actually get into the science behind reality based training and why we
why it
do it
works.
and how. And there is a way how to do that. I mean, you get a lot of guys out there that just go crazy with
Yep.
reality based training. So. But anyways, man, as always, you guys keep training, keep fighting, and keep working. You guys stay safe.
See you next time.
See ya.